EWA Radio, the official podcast of the Education Writers Association, and I'm public editor Emily Richmond. In 2015, Tennessee began offering free community college to qualified students, part of a statewide goal to raise the educational attainment level of its residents. 3 years later, the so-called Tennessee Promise gets close scrutiny in a new project by reporters Adam Tamburin and Jason Gonzales of the Tennessean. They join us now. Adam, welcome to EWA Radio.
Thank you so much.
And Jason, we're glad to have you here as well.
Thank you for having us.
Adam, let's start with you. As you wrote the centerpiece to this project, what is the Tennessee Promise and what did it hope to accomplish?
The Tennessee Promise is a statewide scholarship program that essentially offers almost every graduating high school senior in the state the chance to attend a community or technical college tuition-free. The way it does that is the last dollar model, which means it applies every bit of federal financial aid that would be available to a student before state funds get added into the mix. So if I am a student who would be fully Pell eligible, I wouldn't actually get funding from the Tennessee Promise program, but in participating in the Tennessee Promise program, I would end up going to school tuition free. The goal here was to help with Governor Bill Haslam's Drive to 55. It's his big, ambitious goal to get 55% of Tennesseans with a college degree or certificate by 2025. And at last count, I believe the state data shows that we have 41% now, so there's still a ways to go.
With the caveat that obviously this is pretty early in the initiative from a statistical standpoint, what are people saying? Are they considering this a success?
Generally within the state, certainly state officials see this as a big success. They've seen small but significant upticks in community college enrollment from students coming right out of high school. They've seen small but statistically significant upticks in retention from semester to semester. So I think both internally with the officials that we talk to and with experts in higher ed policy, that they say that this is a qualified success with the understanding that there's a lot to be done. There's a lot of students who still drop out of the program before graduating, and there's still a lot of work to be done to keep those students from falling through the cracks.
This is a massive undertaking, this project. There's a lot of data, a lot of numbers. We're going to dig into some of it. But I want to point out that you two made a very deliberate decision to spend a lot of time talking to the people inside of those numbers whose lives are actually being affected by this. And you lead off one story with Chris Tuchman. He was an early recipient of a Tennessee Promise scholarship. And for a while, he was one of Governor Haslam's favorite talking points. What happened?
Chris Tuchman was a freshman at Nashville State Community College on the first day of Tennessee Promise in the fall of 2015. So the first day that students came to school with this scholarship, he was right there at the table. And Governor Haslam met with a group of students. Chris Tuchman was one of them. And Chris Tuchman came up to the governor and said, you know what? Without this program, I never would have thought of going to college. Yes, maybe this funding would have been available to me through Pell Grants, but I never would have known. I never thought that this was possible for me, and this is the way I'm going to accomplish my dreams. And so Governor Haslam obviously loved that exchange. We have a photograph of it from the first day. And he's brought up Chris multiple times saying, this is just the kind of guy that we want to help with this program. He's the poster boy, really. But what happened was what happens to a lot of students. Chris encountered some hurdles that fall beyond the campus walls. So his mother got sick and he needed to drop out of school to be able to support her. She is better now, but one thing has led to another. He's gotten a job at an Amazon plant here in town, and he is now kind of putting college on the back burner. Chris told me, I'm no longer the poster boy for Tennessee Promise, but I see him as a poster boy for the kind of student that the state of Tennessee really needs to target and say, you should come back.
It's interesting because you could argue that he's actually speaking for a much bigger demographic among the students who are taking advantage of this program.
Absolutely, I agree. I think that was the biggest question. This program has a lot of touch points that students have to meet every semester. They have to hit a certain number of community service hours. They have to come to mandatory meetings. And the big question was, if you miss one of those touch points and you are out of the program, what happens to you? What happens to the students who fall through the cracks? One thing that Governor Haslam did here to try to address that question is created a program called Tennessee Reconnect that Jason's written a lot about. And that program applies to adults 25 and older who get the same option. They can go back to technical college or community college tuition free. It doesn't matter if you have a degree already or if you have any college credits to your name or if you don't, you can come back in. So this is the state's answer to try to get to those adults who have some college, no degree, or no college experience at all.
Jason, you cover Nashville public schools. You're essentially the paper's K-12 reporter. What was it like crossing over to higher ed, especially for this Reconnect story?
When I kind of inherited this job from Adam, we both put our heads together and said, how are we going to bridge that gap and look at where the new frontier is for higher education? With the amount of information that he has put out there about Tennessee Promise and really documenting that, we wanted to then look at, hey, what's going on with the graduation piece? What's going on with the area that the state's really struggling in at this point? So this was a little bit of a step into the role for me. And Adam helped me through it quite a bit, but also I think I was able to bring that K-12 piece into this and really look at it as, hey, there's some things that are going on in K-12, and I'm really seeing a lot of similarities in the higher education realm. And there are some issues that are following students, whether it be cost of living or transportation or food and just getting meals that are following these students all the way through into their college careers.
Jason, there's a lot of data in this story. How hard was it to get it?
It wasn't actually too hard, and Adam worked really closely with Will Doyle, our Vanderbilt researcher, but a lot of this data is publicly accessible to pretty much anyone, and it was a matter of just crunching it. And what Will did for us was really took this data and molded it into something that was very usable and was really simple, not only for us, but for the reader.
Adam, there's an interactive graphic where people can search by zip codes to see the percentage of residents who have earned advanced degrees. It's pretty clear that geography is a big factor in your chances of post-secondary success. Talk to us a little bit about some of the trends you see in that data.
First of all, I would piggyback on what Jason said and say that neither Jason nor I are data reporters. We're not trained in that way. So I would encourage other reporters who feel that is a challenge for them to look for scholars and look for experts like Will Doyle who can help you crunch the numbers and understand what you're looking at. I think that was a really important first step for us. I think certainly what we see is that if you are not in a city in the state of Tennessee, if you're in a rural Tennessee, which is a massive majority of the state, you are much less likely to attend college. So we go from high points of around 79% college attainment in the more affluent districts of Nashville to as low as in the single digits in rural Tennessee, where you're lucky if you have 1 in 4 in a county that have a college degree of some kind. That's certainly one of the trends we've seen. And also within cities, we've seen where you can go on a 5-minute drive from one pocket of Nashville that has 79% to a pocket of Nashville that's more low income, that's more people of color, that has attainment in the low 30s or even lower than that.
So now the trick is trying to figure out what those numbers mean from the standpoint of how many of those folks didn't go to college because of a lack of interest, a lack of opportunity. Are they in those education deserts where there are no campuses? And then conversely, where there are higher levels of attainment, how many of those folks actually graduated from schools within the state as opposed to moving in from another area?
I think experts in the state who are working on this issue would tell you that when it's somebody who didn't go to college, it's a really complicated mixture of multiple factors. Some of it is psychological, this idea that I'm not supposed to go to college. I was never planning on it. That's not for me. Sometimes life gets in the way. You have young children, you have a job, and you can't leave your job behind. It's a really complicated mix. And then, yes, there are sometimes in those rural areas, there's big columns of the state that we can see where it's people who aren't close to a primary site for a community or technical college. And so Will Doyle, the expert we worked with, said it's almost like a gym. You needed to be close by to be motivated to go. So there's a really complicated tapestry of factors that I think the state really needs to address. And it is doing so now by focusing in at a zip code level at these places with low attainment and really trying to look at how can we tackle the challenges specific to this place.
We're talking with Jason Gonzales and Adam Tamburin of the Tennessean about their project on a statewide program to get more students through post-secondary education. We should mention that this project was supported in part by an EWA Reporting Fellowship. This week's episode is sponsored by the Eli and Edith Broad Foundation. The Broad Foundation believes in the power of public education, the potential of students, and the possibilities created by expanding learning opportunities for all children. Visit broadfoundation.org for more information. EWA retains all editorial control over programming and content. Jason, I want to turn back to you for a moment. Let's ask a very frank question here. Is the Tennessee Promise program helping students of color?
It is. At the same time, experts will tell you that this is a program that also has its challenges with students of color and students who are low income. When you look at the graduation rates overall, they are much lower than white students. So yes, it's helping, and you're seeing the increases, but at the same time, there are pieces that the state needs to put in place and is actively putting into place to help its graduation numbers overall. This is a recent focus spurred on by Governor Bill Haslam saying, okay, we have the access in the state. We have Tennessee Promise. We have Tennessee Reconnect now. Now we need to focus on the next piece of this. And the next piece for the state really is getting students across that finish line. The state's really taken up that work through its Lumina grant and also talking more just about race in general. And the goal through those Lumina grants is to get students who are Black and Hispanic graduating at a higher rate by 5 percentage points in 4 years. So the state is actively working on it, but it's still not at the rate of students who essentially are the haves.
Why do you think, Jason, it's been such a tough conversation for Tennessee policymakers and educators to tackle this race question?
In a sense, it's a bit historical. This is a state that remembers segregation, but at the same time, it's not been on people's mind without sort of a catalyst like Governor Bill Haslam saying, we need to focus on this. The attention just wasn't going to be there because it's a state that doesn't traditionally think about those things, even within K-12 education. And that's taken a lot of work to get to that point.
We've talked about how this is Governor Bill Haslam's signature education program. I'm curious what's on the horizon for the momentum that's been built so far. There's a new governor-elect coming in, Bill Lee. He's a Republican. Adam, what's your sense about his priorities?
Well, I know Governor-elect Lee does not have a very extensive political background. His background is more in business. He runs an HVAC company here in Tennessee. He's actually said after his election, now is the time for me to sit back and think about what my priorities will be. So it's still a little bit of a guessing game as to what his outlook is going to be. But we got some hints during the campaign. He's a Republican replacing a very popular Republican governor, but he ran commercials during the campaign saying, for too long, we've encouraged students to go to college. And it was really provocative. He was arguing for technical education, but he certainly wasn't contextualizing that as part of what a typical college experience would look like. I think there's going to be a little bit of tension there about, is he going to continue looking at higher education in the same prism as Governor Haslam has? Governor Lee will be much more focused on technical colleges, less so four-year universities, that sort of thing, based on the messaging he put out during the campaign.
I want to encourage everyone to go to the Tennessean's website and read the full package. There's some tremendous reporting there, and I want to point out Jason has an excellent story looking at that technical college piece. Adam, what's the big surprise here for you in the Tennessee Promise?
You know, it's something that has come up in conversations with national experts at EWA conferences and, frankly, with some officials here in the state, and it is that Governor Haslam was able to take an idea about increasing access to higher education and sell it as a Republican in a deeply Republican state. And this is all at a time when we've seen the idea of tuition-free college become a rallying cry on the left. So it was kind of an interesting needle to watch Governor Haslam thread to see how is he going to sell this idea that's become popular among Democrats and liberals to a supermajority of Republicans in the state house. And the way he did that was really tying it with workforce development. So he said, this is what the companies need. We're losing companies that want to relocate to Tennessee because we don't have enough educated workers here. And so we need programs that are going to really push that forward and push higher education forward. This is a state where there's some hostility among the General Assembly toward higher education. We've seen them reach into the University of Tennessee's budget and defund specific offices that work on diversity and different issues. And so to see the same General Assembly rally behind these other college efforts that are kind of happening on a separate track has been surprising to me.
And Jason, were there surprises for you?
Just on the data piece and how it's broken down by zip code, the state's measure of this is 55% of its residents with a college degree or certificate. We weren't able to factor in the certificate piece of it. So it's a really associate's degree or higher just because of the data reliability. It gets real messy when you start talking about certificates. So that was something that was nice to have Will Doyle on board with all of this. So he told us what we can do with the data or to not do with the data, and really look at that in a reliable way to break this down.
What's been the response to the series?
I think we've gotten a really good response from a really wide range of people who I think are hungry for this kind of reporting. It's not often, certainly in our market, that you see such time and care spent on a dense policy matter such as higher ed. So I think getting to spend that much time with it really showed. It also is pushing people to look at what's next in Tennessee and what the state needs to focus on next. So I'm hopeful that that will be the legacy of the project.
What advice do you have for reporters who may be contemplating not just a daily or an enterprise story, but a big project like this?
Well, I think take advantage of the iPads data, the public data that is available to you. Take advantage of your state coordinating boards that have massive amounts of data. I also think it's important for a project that stretches on as long as ours did to be flexible and to really be open to changing your story ideas or your angles as the news continues to develop. So I think that flexibility piece and chipping away at it really are the bedrock of getting something like this done.
Adam Tamburin and Jason Gonzales are education journalists at the Tennessean, and they're EWA Reporting Fellows. They joined us from their newsroom in Nashville. Thanks for making time for EWA Radio.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that wraps up another episode for us. The mission of the Education Writers Association is to strengthen the community of education journalists and improve the quality of education coverage. For more than 70 years, EWA has helped reporters get the story right. Have a great week, and thanks for listening.